Okay. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Let's begin. The title of tonight's episode is When Decency Starts. And so there's something important here about the fabric of the nature of man. You know, on some level, the human being can be analyzed, can sense subjectified, can be storified, turned into a story. We can do many things with the information that we perceive and we observe, and fundamentally we observe what we are beyond. So in some sense, when you look at a bottle, you're not in the bottle. You know, you're looking at the bottle from outside of it. So similarly, there will come moments where one will feel they're not in their mind. They will feel they're observing their mind. Ask, what are they observing their mind with? The attributes. That means what is observing the attribute is attributeless. This is pretty much a very important position to consider. That the one who's aware that they're aware is you cannot be aware of it. It's attributeless. It's unspeakable. It's too instantaneous to have a relationship in time. I find that existence really isn't much explanation about it. It's just the phenomena of something being. But experience is the control of how existence comes about. That means just like how certain things can leave the person, certain things can be added. You know, so that's pretty much life in some sense. As you travel through different locations, you also travel through different textures of your inner reality. You know, right now as I'm speaking, there's, for example, the room I'm in influencing me, the song I'm listening to influencing me, various factors, you know. But the whole point is that something is changing and something that has no attribute is observing it. You know, this is a mystical position. Now, I kind of see that enlightenment, really a lot of people, what the impression they have of it is, in some sense, detachment. So it's like when the problem is not there, the solution is everywhere, or the solution is nothing and everything at the same time. You know, so in some sense, enlightenment is dismantling the problem, the internal, how the external has made the internal a problem. You can say enlightenment is when the objective self is silent and still, and then the subjective self in the awareness of the witness has an ability to become silent and still, and then the presence of the witness remains. This is kind of strange, but the less the person moves, the more they move as the memory of the world. You know, the more they move, I don't know how to say it, guys. It's like free will is your conscious mind defining things. The lack of free will is kind of like your unconscious mind defining things. Tonight's episode is simply about uh, 8 billion people having an opportunity to think about what decency means and why is it crucial. And when decency is gone, does that mean the species has become intolerant? Do you feel that the species can get a certain point that people, in some sense, forget simplicity. I feel anytime a civilization artificially gets advanced, indecency is the symptom. Indecency means there's something being left behind out of yourself. You know, the decisions in life are fascinating because they shape you. I have made many decisions in my life, and there were some I regretted, and there were some I couldn't regret. There were blessings. And at the same time, I came to see that my mind is like that wheel of fortune, and it's as if every experience is pushing it with a certain intensity. And eventually, through the experience, I land into a certain ideological position. You know, I consider that we can always, we have to realize something fundamental about language and knowledge, that knowledge is a dualistic concept. That means many people, they go towards knowledge, you can say, but what does that mean? That means the person has an inner sphere. So what does that mean? That means that your eyes open in your world first. So imagine everything I'm saying right now, it's like in my own room. Okay? I'm in a room behind my eyes, and I'm saying this. Okay? So now if I was just convinced by this room, if I was just convinced by this internal room, I would forget everything else. I wouldn't even need to give a talk. Every whim of my idea would become my truth. So you see, really, you can say the great disconnect of, you can say the ancient spirit with the modern mind is that it has become intolerant and less accepting of its natural self. So this is something that people should try, because really life is too short to be somebody else. And it's a tragedy. That means you get once. Once every day happens once. The authenticity, the honesty, the simplicity, just who you were born as happens once. It's as if you are given tickets, front row tickets, even more than front row tickets, you know, to the human experience. Now, the thing is, language is what we have. That means all realms of man's communication are bound to duality. That means we cannot communicate the non-dual. We can only silently sit with one another and just be as it. Life is truly an artwork in the making. It's like the biological experience is paint, and the cosmos is drawing every syllable. There is something fascinating. There is something way more to this decency than I'm saying. Right now, I feel the social fabric, society, it doesn't have that decency, or that decency is being filtered out from stepping in society. Do you know? I have seen too many people. Literally, it's funny when you look at people enough. You'll figure this out. That it's as if the inner reality gets built behind their eyes. Then they move. Then they say things. You know. You know, it's like, and those who instantaneously say, they are either super conscious, or they are pretty much people who are like, it's like a reflex. It's like reactive. What I mean by that, it's like the person, rather than just, it's kind of like based on your hunger. If you have a very intense external hunger, excuse me, if you have a really intense external hunger, what that means is you as a creature require more your objective realm moving to feel content than your subjective realm. Some people need their subjective realm. It's like it's kind of unfortunate in Eastern culture, but I think in Western culture it is more. You see, when a person gets old, you can see it. You can see it in your all those people who are older than you. You have no choice but to accept the inevitabilities of life. That means children begin with dreams. Excuse me. And what happens to these dreams? As they awaken to the actual reality, to the objective truths of the world, you know, which is pain and suffering, it is also progress and advancement, but I'm saying, none of us can escape the pain and suffering of this cosmic position. Do you know? It's like any person who, it's kind of strange, it's like all those people who say the purpose of life is happiness. I mean, sure, a turtle can go in its shell and be happy forever, but it's like, as Shakespeare says, a ship is a ship can stand at harbor, but that's not what ships are made for. And the human being can choose to just exist, until it comes time to punch out, or the person can live. Now, living requires acknowledging resources. There was a time that through spiritual context and metaphysical context, I was introduced to this kind of no need to do anything physical because things are spiritual anyway. Like I had that kind of like mindset, so it was kind of strange. It was like this: you become like the perfect fool, but also become the perfect kind of master. So what does that mean? That means a human being who's living at a certain intensity, they will experience various peaks and troughs of that intensity. It's kind of like a person thinking they're an artist, and they're going around, and the person's like, "What do you do?" It's like, "I'm an artist. I'm an artist. I'm an artist." And it's true. I mean, people can be artists, right? But I feel it's a quality of just the intelligence we're given. A lot of the things that people feel are skills are actually qualities provided for everybody, but their intelligence has not gone that way. And when we look at human life, we see it has been an evolution to a strange freedom. That means either it's like we as human beings discuss freedom of speech, but before we were born, the cosmos had a freedom of our design to walk on this earth. In scientific circles, we hear of type 3 civilizations or type 2 civilizations, I believe. Was it type 3? I think it was type 3 civilization. Sorry, it wasn't type 3. It was a civilization, I think it's type 2, yeah. A type 2 civilization can harness the power of its sun, right? So imagine our species in a sci-fi way gets so advanced that we find a way to harness the power of the sun. Now, I was thinking, like, just this power of the sun we're harvesting. I had this playful idea that if there was an advanced extraterrestrial civilization that wanted to spread its designs everywhere, it would not use the sun as an energy. It would not use the sun as a sort of, what do you call it? Energy source. It would use the sun as if every beam of life, every beam of light within it kind of projected life. It's as if the seeds of life were kind of planted in light beams, in the soil of light beams. Light is so fundamental to our psychology, that it's like it's an ability. I think it's an ability. A person who can sit still and silent without any sort of opinion, just in pure observance of their and fascination and awe of their own attention. It's as if there's more things in this world than thoughts. However, our communication and knowledge is in thoughts, is in the linguistic simulation. So you see, guys, as I've kind of dived deeper and deeper, and kind of with a machete, I'm kind of going in the force of my unconscious to try to see what else there is, the more I'm realizing that the individual design has a collective purpose. It's like a puzzle piece. It's like, where else can an objective individual go? Its whole life will be fascinated by the reverse. So you see, it's as if we have no choice but to think about eternity when we associate as temporal creatures. Do you see it? But if you associate it as an eternal being, then you'd suddenly think the opposite. You'd be a kind of wanting to be a temporary being. Imagine you have attained immortality, and thousands and thousands of years have gone by, and you've had a body and you've lived. You see, so what we see, that man doesn't know what's good for him because he's looking from inside the box. And so intuition and true metaphysics and spirituality was not an escapism of the objective realm. It was an advancement of the objective realm. That means at some point, I mean, you can sit back and be like, okay, we're pure materialists, but for how long? It's like nothing we do is purely material. Our whole, for example, social media kind of lives are all like, they're not, they're all manipulated. It's kind of like man has not brought, it's, oh, I got it. This is what's happening, guys. It's like first we brought ourselves into our control, how we see ourselves, free will. Now we want to make it so how we control how others see us. Okay, that's why I think social media has that option where you can post anything. You can, the more you zoom in you do, it's hilarious. It's like social media is kind of inspiring filmmakers, I think, at least. All those girls who like took selfies have some sort of camera experience. Honestly, what I'm saying is that we have aimed to continue ourselves in everything. You go look at metaphysics, none of them could accept emptiness. There was something more in the works. When you go see, even, how can I say it? It's like, I don't understand. I don't want to give any commentary on atheism, but I can tell you, without theism, the word atheism wouldn't exist. And without theism, it's as if kind of like, how can I tell you, religions are artworks in the museum, which you got to respect, but an artwork in a museum shouldn't run a country, for example. Do you know what I mean? So I understand the value of things. I understand the value of the search of man. I understand the value of the discipline to have one united front. Do you know? I understand the value of community. I understand the value of giving freedom to various flowers to grow in the garden of humanity. Like, I understand this, but at the same time, I ask myself, what is the best thing that 8 billion creatures on a rock can do? This is the ultimate philosophical question. And I find what the best thing is to use our resources. We go to look at our resources as a species. What do we have access to? We have access to a vast spectrum of material resources, but due to modern civilization's inefficiency, kind of machine-like ignorance, we find that the resources are not everywhere. Do you know that means people are still hiding their victories? One man's victory is not becoming the species' victory. Only inventors could touch that sphere to some degree. There are many people in history, of course, but I'm saying that right now it's as if it's not an advanced civilization because it can see an advanced possibility it's not doing. Language has been changing. I find myself that a question is a mirror for the mind. And sometimes when questions come to me, if let me tell you, it's like some moments in the day, I let chaos play. I let order and chaos play like kids in a yard. Like I imagine my own childhood, how I was chaotic, how I was ordered, and I see contentment with it. Do you know? There was a time where I remember when I was a kid, I had this habit where It was kind of like you can say it's like, all right, man, have tougher skin. But like, I remember I was like 9 or something, and anytime I would get upset, I didn't want to show it. And I would go under a blanket, sorry, not under a blanket. I would have my room, how would I say it? Like, I would lock the door, completely turn off the room, not blanket, sorry guys, the curtains. I would close the curtains, and in the darkness of the room, I would sit there. I would just sit there in the dark room. And there was something soothing about not moving in my bed and being in a dark room. Kinda as if the darkness of the outer world has something in common with the darkness behind your eyes. So what I mean by that is, like, I remember it was kind of like a flame would occur, an emotional flame, and I would go just rest it out. Honestly, my personal experience, even when I give these talks on of my subjective realm, it's as if like there is a drone in another realm, in another dimension. And this drone can move in its own space of creation. So what I mean by that is that if you want to change the self, you don't necessarily have to change the world. Like, you could be wanting to make a decision, just sit down, close your eyes, after 10 minutes having made a totally different decision. So the self can change even though the world, the situation remains the same. But there are times where the situation, where the world changes, and when the world changes, the self cannot remain the same. If it does, it's retaliating its own change. Yeah. Really, guys, what can I say? We have access to a simple expression and a complex expression. And sometimes we may see the reward of a complex expression, but there is a feeling. So I have spoken about the objective realm, and I've spoken about the subjective realm, and I think now I can slowly begin to incorporate it in my talks. The idea of the emotional reality, and I cannot say this unless the audience considers a fact, that behind every person's mind, they are acknowledging they are a reaction to emptiness, which renders what is required for civilization to be emotional stability. So I ran towards trying to see, okay, what are these intellectual problems of humanity? What are these global problems? So I ran to look at them, only to come to realize that the human being is not a purely rational being. It is a being that is influenced by its potentials, by its visions. So what that means is, regardless of what we do objectively, there is also some sort of subjective change. And in some sense, when you realize attention is the source, that attention not only gives you an ability to discriminate between what is objective, what is subjective, and what is of emotional content, of momentum. I'll get into what emotions are, but what is of an emotion. Do you know emotional momentum has emotional movement? You know, emotions are parallel realities that are resembling the present moment. I'll explain what I mean by emotions. But all I'm saying is it's crucial for us to just consider as a species, everybody is freaking out that there is no actual point to why all this is here, even though evolution, even though all these explanations, they could give me 1,000 explanations, but still the mystery stands larger. All our answers are just one tiny part of the shadow of this great mystery of this world that's here. So I'm saying, whoa, 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 species, we're on a rock. We're on a rock in the middle of nowhere. We have just been in our own bubble. So do you know what kind of courage the future generations require? One that can see beyond our voices. Me and you right now. Our voice has a certain range. I know this because it's language is evolution. Me and you are in a part of history. That means neither it's perfect, neither is it's imperfect. It's just of a different texture. And really, you can't go on. I don't know how people are doing it. I mean, I understand. Discipline, responsibility, all these kind of keep the game active so the person's entertained with the reward system, the gradual reward system of the life that they're kind of being. But I am saying that we must sit down as 8 billion beings and kind of realize that we have inner lives. And these inner lives require to recalibrate the civilization's behavior towards the citizen. That means we're not just existing here. If we choose to live, what are we living for then? Right? So let's say you live for yourself. When I say live for yourself, I'm not talking about objective survival. I mean, like literally, you make the focus of life me. Everywhere you go, you see yourself. You see how people are different from yourself. It's like you become the center of your universe. Just like how foolish like the Inquisition was to believe that Earth was the center of everything. Do you know? So back in the day, so it's the similarly the person thinks, oh, it's just me, and some people come and say, hey man, if it's just you, then why are there others here? That's when the inner realm, any archetype from your inner realm, from your personal truth, is suddenly has to stop, and an objective archetype, an archetype that has some percentage of actual reality in it. Because I am telling you, what's his name? Plato. Plato had this concept, I believe, of honor among thieves. That means even the most chaotic requires some order. So it's always the yin yang symbol. So that means in the worst thing you ever do, you'll realize actually when you have fell, you can only rise. And this is also true that when you rise and rise and rise, guess what? Be careful, Icarus. I have realized that the Buddha was giving a clue of how to maneuver through the subjective and objective landscape. It was by not allowing the future to predefine what the moment is now. That makes you suddenly feel like the simplicity in the complexity. The simple order and the chaotically complex. What is this world but a spectrum, a division? It's as if the artist has painted so many paintings, that he has for the hand and the brush and the painting have all become one moment for him. And I thought something intense, guys. I thought, what if man, imagine this story where the person made it into heaven. He got into heaven and it's like everything's cool, imagine. And then the person's like, so God, tell me, why did you create all this suffering? Why did you do all this? And imagine God looks at man and he's like, sorry, I couldn't make all of them perfect. And there comes this moment where you realize that yes, we do have individual free will, but the vitality of this free will is in the context of a social creature. So ultimately, what is society? Communication between minds. Like, first thing, really important, acknowledge there's any human being you see, they are an unknown pillar of intelligence just walking. Unknown. Don't act like you know anyone ever. Because when you do, you actually miss out on who they're being. This is the kind of folly of what they say, the early blind love, where the person has not actually fallen in love with the other. The person has fallen in love with what they want the other to be, and they don't want to believe that the other could be anything else. Do you see? But just to be able to say, whoa, 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 my subjective realm is moving more than my objective realm. Sometimes when you're subjective, my subjective realm, sometimes throughout the day when I see very like, okay, too many unique thoughts have come to my mind, I just sit down. That's a sign, like, just sit down, close your eyes, and receive the wave. Life is a dance between the known and the unknown. And those who comprehend this will access the real earth. There is no other earth outside of this. It's kind of finding a moment where your body is bowing to your mind and your mind is bowing to your soul, because your soul is bowing to all. So you find an ultimate kind of convergence points where your psychology literally shifts from being a person who has linear memories, and you see all those linear memories were like a radiant in a sphere. So you suddenly get 360 vision. When you get 360 vision, at least in my subjective realms personally, there's a geometrical opening, so you see no idea is alone. So you may sit down and say, yo, I got a thought, but that thought is not alone. And if you're aware and sensitive of your subjective realms, you see the endless potential of the mind to advance. It's like the mind has not been built for anything else other than endless continuity. Because why do we survive? Why do we survive? Why is it important? Because we are the moment. We are the life in the moment. We are the dancing soul in the wind of eons. When it comes to mystical intuition, there's a story that comes from these Persian lovers, I believe. Just like Romeo and Juliet, these two were like the Romeo and Juliet of the East. And so their names were Layli and Majnun. Okay? Layli and Majnun, Layli is the girl and Majnun is the... And so there's like these kind of like, deeply profound stories about them. Divine stories. And the story, kind of to give you a context, is like Majnun is crazy. The guy is crazy in love with this girl, but is in love with her true self. That's totally different than being in love with his own idea of her, right? He's like, it's totally different when somebody's mind, you are drawn to someone because of their mind, and their mind is really their vision, right? Or someone you're drawn just because of the surface kind of vision. So Majnun, and there's I'll tell you the ending of what happens to these lovers. It kind of has a similar kind of feeling as Romeo and Juliet, but I'll tell you. So what happens is that Majnun is sitting on a table with his friends, his boys, his buddies, his homies, And on the other side, the princesses sit, the inner princesses, And so what happens is, what's his name? Layla, sorry, what's her name? Layla is there, sitting there, she's very beautiful. She's sitting there with her friends. And what happens? Suddenly she comes and she takes Majnun's plate in front of his friends and slams. Like, imagine like you're sitting at a dinner, with your girlfriend, and she comes and slams, bam, like the plate on the table, It's like definitely property damage to the table. But the whole point is she comes and breaks his plate loudly and she's angry. She doesn't say anything and she just slams his plate and breaks his plate and leaves. Now check this out, guys. The girls leave. Then, what happens? Majnun, his buddy's looking at him. It's like, holy shit, this dude's heartbroken, man. There's more fish in the sea, bro. Don't worry about it. You know, there's always tomorrow. Yeah. Majnun says, no, guys, you don't get it. Majnun is happy. And they're like, Majnun, why are you so happy, man? She just broke the plate in front of you. And he says, no, you guys don't see it. She broke my plate. Her soul chose me, you know, like something like that. You know, if I like, I feel that was like, I got the story down, but like what I'm telling you was that it's the unknown, you know, it's very different when known attention is on you. Usually people they it's so simple for them that they're like, think of it this way. Some things that you don't even think about being grateful for is because you have had for so long, you feel never will go away, you know. But anyways, it's the idea of attention from the unknown and the attention from the known and the indirectness of the attention from the unknown. And we have to consider unknown first. So humanity will always be a dream. Strangely, it is like a dream. Like what do we see in a dream? In a dream, we don't know where it began. We don't know how, like in some sense, like at the end of it, the pure end of the storyline in the dream. You know, we wake up before the pure end of the storyline, so in the dream state. So what I'm saying is, it's kind of like, wait, is history a dream? Because we can't go back and see our origin, and we can't go so in the future. So it's as if temporary life is a dream in a bigger landscape. The microcosm is the dream of the macrocosm, and the macrocosm is the dream of the microcosm. It's like when a fractal looks in the mirror, the heavens' heartbeat is seen. You know, I have had moments where there were certain pressures to my physical body, you know? And I remember just kind of like having a moment where I was just looking at life and acknowledging how temporary it can be, how it can end, how the breath can fly away. But the living is alive. And the fact that there is before there isn't is its own eternity. That means temporary. It's like in an eternally vast, let's say, cosmos, in an infinite cosmos, our finite dreams are made in the reflection of that eternity. So in our temporary life, we try to be as eternal as possible, subconsciously. Really, when we can have a new relationship with language as a species, we will already have made the first step to being an advanced civilization. A civilization that is becoming more and more observant of its faculties of intelligence, not just the biological apparatus instrument as if your physical body. Sometimes when I move, sometimes when I run, sometimes when I do simple things, it's as if there's something very fascinating about once you accept something, you can use it. Anything you have that subconsciously you have not accepted, you cannot use. You will not allow yourself to use. We have to realize that violence, the same energy, all that energy going to people feeling violence is strength, that kind of alpha male guerrilla strategy that's happening in the streets where violence is, you know, that needs to die down. That needs to shift. What I mean by that is that in some sense, certain ideologies will automatically get pulled away from civilization when we realize the value of what we can have over the value of something we just want to prove in the moment. I think wisdom begins when you acknowledge the veil, these veils of thought, this veil between the objective and the subjective. And guys, this is so evidence based. Like, let me tell you, let me tell you why. Because it has been just an an error of definition that we just forgot in all our systems of knowledge to acknowledge the subjective realms of people. There is so much influencing so much that everything seems to be everything. That means right now, if I ask you your atoms, the atoms that are being you, imagine a coming to you and it's like, hey man, do you know you're stardust? And the person's like, excuse me? It's like, you're stardust. And the person's like, what do you mean? And it's like, these atoms are ancient. So it's like ancient atoms kind of, for a little while being a modern modernity, So really life is way more multidimensional than we have been raised to believe. So what does that mean? That means there's uncharted territory. The next wave of people should start having a philosophical fascination with the implication of their action, their intention. I feel like really we got to realize, what is the value? Is the value with everybody thinking the same? Or is the value in everybody's inner realms that are unique, that are seeing something about the world that others don't have, finds a way to communicate? Right now, the civilization is not at a state where it can come to the people. So what does that mean? That means the best thing people can do in all countries when they look at the power structures of their government is to act like the best citizens until the civilization is ready to grow up. So what that means is it's like the war will go on if you retaliate. So how does it change? It changes with the behavior of human beings, with the realization of the wealthy that, holy shit, I'm leaving empty-handed. There's of course, this is from the Zen mindset, where Zen is very hardcore. Like I like my talks, I try to navigate into some sort of smooth way of talking about death, but in Zen it's intense. Those people introduced to Zen have the strange blessing of finding very unique ways of confronting emptiness. In Zen, I think it was Shunryu Suzuki, if I'm correct, he said something like, life is like a boat, that this boat just goes. No, he said life is like you build a boat and you get on it and you paddle halfway in the ocean and then the boat sinks. That raw, guys. That existentially raw, as if you build a system, you develop something, then suddenly it shuts down, then suddenly it ends. So you tell me, if a being confronts his end after his beginning, like a creature has begun, some intelligence program is active. Now, as the person has begun, does considering the end serve or does it not? And I will tell you, your mortality is the source of your inspiration. There is no greater teacher than the sands of the hourglass. There's no greater teacher than realizing the opportunity experience as it travels. It's as if, think of your consciousness as this wind. And what is this wind going through? As if this vision, this sight just instantly moving. In my subjective realms, you can use an elemental relationship, In your subjective realms, it's very easy. I mean, by having an awareness to language, at least I found a way to speak about it, but it's like realizing the simplest way is you're being a moment of attention. Just let's say you're a moment of being. That's the simplest thing you really can say, Like if you really ultimately, let's say political correctness gets out of hand and the person, it's like he's about to say the guy's name and he's like, okay, you moment of being. So you see, simple, just a presence of awareness of, and the content within this awareness is not just your physical body. It seems like, imagine like right now, I don't know how to say it. It's like just acknowledge the objective realm you're in and just wonder for yourself, okay, be completely still in the moment and just for a second think like, where is thought? What else is moving? When I'm super still and I notice something moving, like as in like an idea moving, it appears to me something like a distance, a meter in the air. Sometimes I feel thoughts are orbiting around me, you know? It's like we have a sort of gravitational pull and thoughts have a sort of subjective density, you know? This is of course a hypothesis, you know? But I think it's important to consider these. For me, my work with language is simply this. I respect the word. The word can be a world. For some reason, I feel like going into a quote tunnel of Hafiz quotes. Just a second, guys. There we go. All right, guys. Excuse me. So, guys, what I wanted to say is that let me see what. Oh yeah, words are subjective worlds with image. They can have image. They can have sound. And so I thought of this quote from Hafiz, this man from 700 years ago, this Persian Sufi mystic poet. He says something in the sense of the words you speak become the house you live in. And so I thought about language, and I see this man Hafiz as someone whose eyes was really open in this world. So anyways, I'm going to read some of his poetry for you, like his writings. He says, your love should never be offered to the mouth of a stranger, only to someone who has the valor and daring to cut pieces of their soul off with a knife, then weave them into a blanket to protect you. Okay, okay. Hafiz says, stay close to anything that makes you glad you're alive. Hafiz says, I have learned so much from God that I can no longer call myself a Christian, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Jew. The truth has shared so much. The truth has shared so much of itself with me that I can no longer call myself a man, a woman, an angel, or even a pure soul. Love has befriended me so completely it has turned to ash and freed me of every concept and image my mind has ever known. Hafiz says, I wish I could show you the astonishing light of your own being. Hafiz says, I once asked a bird, how is it that you fly in this gravity of darkness? She responded, love lifts me. Hafiz says, your heart and my heart are very, very old friends. I mean, if you meant the literal heart, no, I'm joking. All right, let's go. Let's go. It happens all the time in heaven. And someday it will begin to happen again on earth. Okay, guys, I think there's something missing from this quote. I'm going to go to the next one. Hafiz says, be kind to your sleeping heart. Take it out into the vast fields of light and let it breathe. I have 1,000 brilliant lies for the question, how are you? I have 1,000 brilliant lies for the question, what is God? If you think that the truth can be known from words, if you think that the sun and the ocean can pass through that tiny opening called the mouth, oh, someone should start laughing. Someone should start wildly laughing now. Yeah, he means like the unknown. You can't do much with the unknown. You know, at most you could be like, all right, it's here. Hafiz says, what do sad people have in common? It seems they have all built a shrine to the past and often go there and do a strange wail in worship. What is the beginning of happiness? It is to stop being so religious like that. Hafiz says, this place where you are right now, God circled on a map for you. He says, fear is the cheapest room in the house. I would like to see you living in better conditions. Guys, this quote is so well written. Wow. Hafiz says, I am in love with every church and mosque and any kind of shrine, because I know it is there that people say the different names of the one God. You see, the singular dimension has a very deeply emotional relationship with many people. Hafiz says, you are your own obstacle. Rise above yourself. Yeah, this is so true, guys, because when you realize nobody has your eyes, you become fully responsible for your sight. So your intelligence actually opens up because it trusts what it is being and seeing. Then you live. Hafez, it seems like the poem is called What Happens. So he says, what happens when your soul begins to awaken your eyes and your heart and the cells of your body to the great journey of love? So what happens when your soul begins to awaken your eyes and your heart and the cells of your body to the great journey of love? Hafez says, first there is wonderful laughter and probably precious tears, and sweet promises, and those heroic vows no one can ever keep. But still, God is delighted and amused. You once tried to be a saint. What happens when your soul begins to awake in this world to our deep need to love and serve the friend? Oh, the beloved will send you one of his wonderful wild companions like Hafez. Hafez says, what we speak becomes the house we live in. There we go. Hafez says, when all your desires are distilled, you will cast just 2 votes, to love more and be happy. The heart is a 1,000-stringed instrument that can only be tuned with love. There was a 4-year-old child whose next-door neighbor was an elderly gentleman who had recently lost his wife. Upon seeing the man cry, the little boy went into the old gentleman's yard, climbed onto his lap, and just sat there. When his mother asked what he had said to the neighbor, the little boy said, nothing. I just helped him cry. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Look at what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. So that if you as a living being, in regards to your humanity, your species, your civilization, your true pride, nationalism is not your true pride. Nationalism is your abstraction. The true pride is just 8 billion creatures on a rock. If they can unite and be efficient, we'll advance civilization. If they can't, we'll no advance civilization. You know, just the anarchy of the bewildered savage. So anyways, Hafez says, admit something. Everyone you see, you say to them, love me. Of course, you do not do this out loud. Otherwise, someone would call the cops. Still, though, think about this. This great pull in us to connect. Why not become the one who lives with a full moon in each eye, that is always saying with that sweet moon language what every eye in this world is dying to hear? Hafez says, run, my dear, from anything that may not strengthen your precious budding wings. Run like hell, my dear, from anyone likely to put a sharp knife into the sacred, tender vision of your beautiful heart. I mean, yeah, definitely. Like, if it's that intense. Hafez says, the earth would die if the sun stopped kissing her. Wow. This is perfect marriage advice, guys. Hafez is giving marriage advice 700 years ago, man. This poet is next level. Hafez says, for I have learned that every heart will get what it prays for most. We have come into this exquisite world to experience ever and ever more deeply our divine courage, freedom, and light. The small man builds cages for everyone he knows, while the sage who has to duck his head when the moon is low keeps dropping keys all night long for the beautiful rowdy prisoners. Hafez says, I am happy even before I have a reason. Hafez says, now is the time to know that all that you do is sacred. Now is the time for you to deeply compute the impossibility that there is anything but grace. Carry your heart through this world like a life-giving sun. Wow. Exactly. That's a life-giving sun is a good archetype, guys. Hafez says, love sometimes wants to do us a great favor, hold us upside down and shake all the nonsense out. Hafez says, I long for you so much, I follow barefoot your frozen tracks that are high in the mountains that I know are years old. I long for you so much, I have even begun to travel where I have never been before. That's crucial, guys. Kinda the unknown of your own life fascinating you and pulling you towards your own development of your living. Hafez says, start seeing everything as God, but keep it a secret. Oops. I mean, with these talks, but whatever. I think it's like you can't hold something that's being everything a secret, really. Hafez says, the sun will stand as your best man and whistle when you have found the courage to marry forgiveness. When you have found the courage to marry love. That's what I mean when decency starts, when the human being realizes it is more an advancement of their character to be themselves in the inner storm. So just like how there's weather conditions outside, sometimes there's internal weather conditions. A person who goes on stage and gets nervous, guess what? There's an internal weather condition, literally. The person is responding to more than what is actually present in the moment. Hafez says, how did the rose ever open its heart and give to this world all of its beauty? It felt the encouragement of light against its being. Otherwise, we all remain too frightened. Hafez says, an awake heart is like a sky that pours light. He says we are people who need to love, because love is the soul's life. Love is simply creation's greatest joy. You know, I would kind of, I see a parallel to this sentence. Like, I could see this sentence also be written, love is simply creation's greatest creation. I don't know, like that idea is there for me. Hafez says the great religions are the ships, poets the lifeboats. Every sane person I know has jumped overboard. Yeah, guys, in an artificial machine shredder-like society, guess what? You will wonder more intensely, and then responsibility arises, and then the evolution of joy into service, and then that service returning to joy. So it's like life becomes managed by serving it and then experiencing it, serving it, experiencing it, serving it, experiencing it. Yeah, maintaining the oscillation of the emptiness of reality, acknowledging that, and the value. The emptiness inspires service. The fullness of it brings joy, simply. Hafez says, now that all your warriors proved such an unlucrative business, why not find a better job? This man is giving so much advice, you know. Yeah, guys, this is all from the poet. Like every time I say Hafez, like that's the guy's name. I'm almost done. I'm just gonna read a little bit more of his quotes, and I feel we can navigate outside of this tunnel, quote tunnel. Hafez says, love sometimes gets tired of speaking sweetly and wants to rip to shreds all your erroneous notions of the truth that make you fight within yourself, dear one. Make you fight within yourself, dear one, and with others, causing the world to weep on too many fine days. The beloved sometimes wants to do us a great favor, hold us upside down and shake all the nonsense out. He says, I should not make any promises right now, but I know if you pray somewhere in this world, something good will happen. Hafez says, join me in the pure atmosphere of gratitude for life. Pure gratitude. That is the ultimate mental health. Practicing pure gratitude, exist, like being grateful that you're a moment of it, like experiencing existence. He says, listen, this world is the lunatic sphere. Don't always agree it's real. Even with my feet upon it and the postman knowing my door, my address is somewhere else. Wow. He says, do not surrender your grief so quickly. Let it cut more deeply. Let it ferment and season you, as few human or divine ingredients can. Something is missing in my heart tonight that has made my eyes so soft, and my voice so tender, and my need of God so absolutely clear. Yeah, guys, because really, we are intelligent, but this intelligence is just left as us. And so it's like we're this energy wondering what to do now that it can control itself, right? And so when we look outside, really there isn't, I mean, we have money as an abstract concept, yet, people are struggling in the streets. Like, I'm like, it's ridiculous. For me, resources should be instant. That's the greatest resource. Don't you want to have, imagine you had a machine that in every instant could generate the exact kind of atomic kind of food or something, right? Now, I'm not saying this is good, but I'm saying like it's a fascinating technology that you can, in some sense, let's say 3D print the best food. Something like that. That ability, oh, that instantaneity as a resource, like I think it's an uncommon idea. Hafez says, learn to recognize the counterfeit coins that may buy you just a moment of pleasure, but then drag you for days like a broken man behind a farting cow. Oh my God. One regret, dear world, that I'm determined not to have when I am lying on my deathbed is that I did not kiss you enough. Hafez says, I caught the happy virus last night when I was out singing beneath the stars. It is remarkably contagious. So kiss me. Jesus. Guys, you got to know something about the Sufi mentality. They were in love with the truth of another world. And that other world they acknowledged was in everything. So what I'm saying is, when you go back into the core of Eastern psychology, before it was like, sure, there was the archetype of man and woman, but there was also the archetype of the divine and the non-divine, right? And the archetype of the divine and the non-divine had to do with how the mind of the human being had opened to the moment, how it had opened to the moment. Anyways, Hafez says, sing because this is a food our starving world needs. Laugh because that is the purest sound. I feel a lot of comedians' life purposes have been validated by this quote. Hafez says, now is the time to understand that all your ideas of right and wrong were just a child's training wheels, to be laid aside when you finally live with veracity and love. Let tenderness pour from your eyes the way the sun gazes warmly on earth. Let's get loose with compassion. Let's drown in the delicious ambience of love. Okay, this guy just wants to party as a soul, you know. Hafiz says, "Oh, you who are trying to learn the marvel of love through the copybook of reason. I am very much afraid that you will never really see the point." Wow. Because, guys, reason needs to have something to work with. In order to have that, it must declare it static. By declaring it static, you make the world lifeless. So because the world is lifeless, the intellectual approach just becomes progress, just becomes a robotic progress. So the person can miss out on the other dimensions of life, for example. You know, life is not just one dimension to maintain. It's not just one way to kind of sustain. And to be honest, the very, very wise soul, I find, they are conscious of history's moment. They are conscious of the significance of the moment. That means every person is like, oh my God, are we being pioneers of the future right now? But regardless of what we do, it's like, yeah, you know? So every person should roar their mind. This is kind of a bold statement, but I say every person can write a library. There are ways that every person can share their inner realms. Hopefully one day I'll set up these kind of advanced writing workshops, and it's pretty much just like I'll just make it a talk or something, public talk one day, hopefully, where I'll tell people how to write a library of their vision, of their inner realms. There is something there. There is something so fascinating about our position, our existential position. It surpasses any sort of cultural program. Do you see what it is? It's kind of like, imagine your mind right now. There's the biological program. Let me say it like this. Like, imagine like a phone, like where many applications are open. Imagine right now in your current moment, the biological application is active. The subjective application, the linguistic simulation, the language application, all those are the same thing, you know? That's open too. That's active too. Then you see the emotional program is also active. Then you see that also there, for example, like when I say the cultural program, that means a person in a cultural atmosphere can never really be themselves. They are too defined by the environment to be actually authentically different from the community. So you see, when you step in a kingdom, guess what? You're in that kingdom. So similarly, communities and the behaviors, and even you can take this to the level of corporate, the personalities of corporations, how the community, how people are living in like that building together every day. Because for me, a person who spends a lot of work is literally living there, right? And so the person has to consider the reward from it. A lot of people there, I find that it is commendable. Like I'm not looking down on it. I'm just saying that a lot of people are doing jobs that are labor, that are just repetitive, okay? That are just kind of like something that a robot may replace in the future. So if you thought right now 2 years ahead, let's say, I don't know, Ray Kurzweil says 2050. Let's make it 2100. So the 2100, imagine like when it comes to there's no labor jobs and you're just left as a chill, relaxed human being on the earth, and you're like, what now? Right? What it's like, imagine a moment, just imagine everybody was a billionaire. Imagine. And we made the greatest streets, and because everybody was a billionaire, they just made the most advanced civilization. After some point, they began to see their inner realms. So once you see the inevitabilities of the outer realm, you begin considering the inner realm, and that's when the person becomes drawn to any sort of metaphysical kind of illumination. Because life is a strange scenario, and we put it into many and to realize that you're not just like a snapshot photo. Like when somebody asks you who you are, and let's say you give an answer. So that's like you getting a canvas, the empty space, the silence of the moment before you respond is like an empty canvas. And so you are communicating, right? Let's say somebody asks you, who are you? And you're like, I'm this. you know? And so it's as if like for in that moment, the person in that empty canvas is drawing I am this and giving it to him. Now imagine that person, because he said I am this, has to have this painting in front of his eyes all the time. And that painting, that snapshot of reality is kind of like how Hafiz was like, oh, someone should start laughing wildly now. As if we rather than being kind of disappointed by the inevitable infinitude and the mystery of the unknown, we become fascinated. We become content. We become the ones that are less aware of the unknown. Sometimes life is not all action. That action ultimately is an experiential position. You know, it's still like a playful kind of root, like a strange kind of puzzle. It comes into my mind often that in this moment, am I a static being or a dynamic being? And at best, I've resolved it as a sort of oscillating in between. That is the best resolution. That means you must have ways of acknowledging yourself as a sort of static kind of image, but also have an ability to realize you're way more than that. And that's what the transformation and the growth in life pretty much suggests. That every new experience you have somehow shifts everything. Do you know? Shifts your attention to the next moment. Imagine we have a kid that is the son of a king, and we have a kid who's the son of a shoemaker. Now, one kid has gone into, like literally both children are born, imagine at the same time, their eyes open and they start accumulating experience of their reality, of their realm. So as these kids accumulate this experience of their realm, the kid who has nothing is constantly entering into moments where it's being reduced. Wherever he goes, they're like, get out of here, kid. And it's like the only time people are nice to him is when they're giving shoes to him, you know. So the kid is constantly dishonored by the external realm. Their inner realm is endlessly dishonored. Now I'll tell you what happens to psychology of that kid, but I'm gonna now tell you about the psychology of the kid who was born as like a prince. Every desire, everything he ever wanted was accessible, but because the kid is a young child, he doesn't want, he's still looking, you know. Before desires form, it needs to be a self to desire. That self doesn't take shape on, I don't know, what does the psychologist say, like after the age of 14 the person is really an individual to themselves or something. The wisdom of courage is the highest honor of the soul. That means some people in this life who are automatically being honored. What I mean by that is like imagine that kid, that prince. It's as if that is the chess piece that had to move. I find that there is a great discovery of the reaction of everyone to emptiness subconsciously, and also just the realization that we have sparked language. Just like how we sparked fire, we sparked language. We started ascribing subjective phenomenology to objective phenomenology, and with precision. So when you see that object, it's a cup. When you see that object, it's a bottle. When you see that, it's a window. You know, so you automatically like have this kind of subjective crystallized kind of outlook on many things. Now in regards to the concepts the person is familiar, there's kind of two approaches to intelligence. One is static, so you're pretty much like trying to be a file cabinet of a knowledgeable being. The other is you are inspired by your own unknown, the unconscious, to such a degree that you have forgotten everything about everything else and are really pursuing your questions, your eyes, the mysteries of your own eyes. That's when, okay, now that's a person I would like to, I would always have a conversation with, because that person has seen the ability of the attention to not just see the self as the ultimate source of the significance of reality, but to see where the self is also to be the witnessing dynamism of the intelligence. So what I mean is that sometimes you accumulate, sometimes it's riding a wave. Sometimes when I speak, yes, like my sensory perception came upon the story, it accumulated it, it understood it. But sometimes how the story is shared is because like there is something, there's a, I don't know how to say it. It's like our minds are more alive than our language. And the word soul, nobody should be scared of that word, and nobody can really touch that word. Let me tell you why. Because it's like the unknown x variable in a mathematical equation. That's what the hard problem of consciousness automatically can be said to be. Because it's like there is an unknown. There is an unknown variable where all of knowledge is arising from. Like how it doesn't get more fascinating than that. So all scientists and like it's as if like the future generations are going to be like, hey, past generations, what are you fighting about? We choose, we decide, we are the architects of the consequences of our vision. The content of the vision, you don't always have a choice where you are. But what how the sensory perception animates, yes. And when you realize you're not just an objective being, you're subject being maneuvered by an attention. And even when the person sleeps and you dream, what does that mean? That means your mind has given the consciousness a permission to be in a body, but that body is not the actual physical body. So you can say a dream is a world in a world, right? The main world where the guy's sleeping, and the dream where the world that is occurring. So you see, it's as if like it's fascinating. It's not just that there could be a spectrum of dimensions. Like imagine the light going in the Pink Floyd album, the light going through the prism and the white light and becoming the color spectrum. So that color spectrum, each color could be its own dimension of the whole reality. But the relationship of these colors can be purely isolated, or they can be codependent. That means it's like either the multidimensionality is like onion style, like concentric spheres, or it's in some sense kind of like different color waves, like a color spectrum. So that was my fascination. That what is life is the mover of intelligence, the source movement of intelligence. And when we realize we are defining ourselves, how much freedom does that give you? How much freedom does that give you as a being? That the whole point of life is to implement your free will, right? Like when you look at trees, they can't move. Again, I need to emphasize this, but when you look at trees, they don't move. So, okay, purpose of man, he has legs, so move. So a part of your life purpose is to just live as this biological update of this, to kind of maintain what this natural pattern is. Okay? But at the same time, the inner realms deserve advancement. If they ask me, I heard the concept of the soul earlier than the mind, but I was as a kid, especially at the age of 11, fascinated by the mind, because I had heard some from this article, this like the human being uses 10% of its brain. And I was like, how how do you use the rest? And I had many thoughts until in 2013 I got the answer. That it's not as an individual being. It's the environment. When we stepped out of the food chain, certain sectors of our brain became dormant. So that means our biology was dependent on the environment. So regardless of if the environment now becomes more machine-like, guess what? When the biological human being finds himself in a machine world, it'll be like, why am I the one out? Why don't I fit in? And everybody's going to want to be a robot, you know? But this argument can be made, especially in for many societies, that artificial intelligence existed way before we created it. Guys, let me tell you something. I would like to say this to the people in the chat section. And of course, free will is everywhere. But I'm saying, like, this is my suggestion. There was a time where in my youth, I would, for some reason, I would curse a lot. You know? I like my use of language was chaotic. It wasn't ordered. And it had a kind of situation where it's like when emotions come in, the more you're being pulled to your personal realm. Do you know? So I kind of had this approach. I even say this to as an advice to writers, that only write when something is important enough, when the vision is there enough to continue with it, right? So what I mean by that is, imagine you just one day not saying anything, silence. And only times you speak, it is like a sniper, concentrated, simple. You see, people think complexity is genius, but all the ancient sages and even polymaths knew. Da Vinci says simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Why? Because in your simplicity, you can see the complexity. And I'm saying, just maintain your speech. It's like, if the attention goes on the person's inner realm through the awakening of emotions in the moment, the person cannot even see the outer realm. So what I mean by that is, like, ask yourself, imagine like your greatest self and your worst self right beside you in the room. Now imagine how your worst self would speak and how your greatest self would speak, and you would see that what the greatest self is an idea of the non-mistaken being. So what does that mean? That means, how can I tell you? It's like, find the inner rhythm, then move. So I'll tell you, like, I respect the comments, guys, but it is about, I think, sharing the inner realms with a tolerance of a multidimensional system. There is no answer. We're throwing, like, literally imagine like a bunch of chimpanzees throwing like bananas at each other. You know, that's when language, ultimately, if we stop caring and we're just in our inner realms, that's ultimately what it becomes. It just becomes throwing sound, you know? But it is only in that tension where true ideas, I've seen the soil of genius is in your original attention. All of meditation, everything. There isn't much you can do in this plane of existence, to be honest. You know, the best thing is to be aware of the self. So if in your psychology self came first, awareness will be dependent on how you define the self. But if in your psychology awareness is there first, then the self is given endless freedom in regards to how the contents of the moment come and go and change, and yet the presence is there. The attention is, as you know, the New Age community idolizes, is here and now. It's like they asked Eckhart Tolle, where do you live, man? He's like, here and now. It's like, that's so vague. It's like in Eckhart Tolle's driver's license, the address, it just says here and now. I love Eckhart Tolle. Like I respect him as a colleague, kind of colleague in the language wars of the species. But also, guys, the reason I shared that thing about language is like to kind of maintain an elegance. Because if you realize really the value of every moment, it's like there's an energy, there's a subjective landscape, and then there's an ability to act. Literally like video game style. So I'm telling you, it's like see yourself as the peasant, but also see yourself as the king. Like this is so crucial because I am telling people just like a Rumi was like kind of I am pushing Rumi's echo, you know. Kind of he said a bird needs two wings to fly and these wings are like chaos and order. Do you understand how significant that is? The known and the unknown is required for a mind to exist. I find ourselves ultimately to be just explorers in the language wars. The language wars is how a species is still there's an ideal worship going on. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Ultimately what I'm trying to say is that there's a level of decency that is accessible if people start observing their inner realms and their subjective realms more simply. Master the simple, complexity won't overwhelm you. After you've mastered the simple, you will master the complex because the simple has nowhere else to go other than the complex. So when the psychology has this strange kind of yin-yang balance to it, this yin-yang oscillation, is kind of like the failure and the victory shifting all the time. Shir Nisargadatta Maharaj says, when I see that I am nothing, nothing, like nothing. He says, when I see that I am nothing, that is wisdom. When I see that I am everything, that is love. So before I tell you the third part, let me just explain. When he says, when I see that I am nothing, that is wisdom, that means you as a living creature realizing the hollowness of extinction, realizing the hollowness of the end of the temporary candle of life. So in some sense, what I'm saying is, that's when you see you're nothing. That's when it's wisdom. That's when it's awareness moving self. But when he says, when I see that I am everything, that is love, that is Satchit Ananda. That is the evolution of the emptiness. That is the emptiness realizing, the attention and the intelligence in the present moment realizing. All veils are cut by one dimension. It's like a tuning fork slowly stopping its resonance. But as it's kind of tuning, we are eternal pilots temporarily navigating a plane of existence. Ultimately, individual consciousness requires collective fulfillment. The collective without the individual doesn't exist. The collective is the dream of the individual. The individual is the dream of the void. The void is the ultimatum of the collective. The collective realizes the individual. The individual realizes the collective. They realize they're all there is. Humanity realizes there's work to do. This work ultimately requires the internal realities of people somehow finding a way to shift civilization. When I say we are pioneers, that means we are in the front lines of the battlefield. We are in the front lines if all those children who have not been born yet are back in the lines in the back. You know, they're in kind of near the general's tent, you know. So the effort is collective self-awareness. And this has to be protected, but it doesn't mean blindness. So that means you can say that violence day and night endlessly take turns. A rock spins in the void. Even though the sun, we are orbiting around the sun, two spheres in empty space, how can you tell which is orbiting around which? So what I mean by that is that not the objective evidence, but I'm saying the philosophical kind of dimension that free will is the evolution of the void into the infinite. When I say infinite, it means boundless identity. So right now you're just identifying, imagine, with just your physical dialogue. I think that's the direction. Open dialogue, open global dialogue. As if we make it as if like a tower where the center of the tower is the most honest and the outside is the dishonest. And all ideologies come through the system. And as they come to the core and to the core, they have to ultimately count they have to reflect upon themselves. I don't know what it's kind of like. We think about what's the best kind of civilization we can create, a self-sustaining one, you know. We have devalued the human experience to the point that it's easy not to care on people on the street. We have devalued the ability of the mind. Objective behaviors have infiltrated the true selves of people. Ultimately, they are trying to just live their days, I find. It's kind of poetic, you know? You're just going through it, going through this life, all right? You got the golden, Willy Wonka's golden ticket, now you're in the chocolate factory, you know, which is this cosmos. I think the cool thing is, because we are in a pioneer stage, ultimately means we can make the best mistakes. And what that means is we may not make the best solutions. Like right now, 2020 may not be a year of heroes, but we can make incredible mistakes. And what that means is mistakes are permission to see another angle. It's an addition of vision. It's not a loss of vision. Nobody can fail and feel they got nothing out of it, you know, out of the experience, you know. Anyways, guys, wonder what an advanced civilization is like, and then try to live in one. As the inner realms become more tolerant to extend into the outer realms, Anyways, guys. Oh, sorry guys, I can't pinpoint what you guys are commenting on, so I thought I asked. Yeah. I don't know, guys. I'm trying to use metaphors. Ultimately, a metaphor is seeing one pattern in another, right? It's like you can make anything strangely a metaphor. It's like the air in my lungs was a metaphor for the space between the planets, you know? Like you can do that, you know? But decency, there is something to it. There is some, oh, I remember. There was a quote that said something like, it was in the Upanishads, I think, or the Gita or somewhere. The quote said it's better to live like an honest, simple honest, simple person rather than a sort of kind of, God, I'm totally butchering this quote. It's better to live as an honest, simple person than a dishonest king. And the reason this was said, that there is some part of you that you have to maintain, and it is your vitality. When you realize there's an inner self to maintain, it's just fascinating, guys. I think we haven't made any progress since the caveman. I mean, that's too much. That's saying too much. But we, but I'm saying, like, language has a hollowness to us, which is of concern to me. And so that seems to be the illusion of the person wanting their personal, their inner realms to see something as something. Do you know how much you breathe better, guys? How much you breathe better when you, in other people's subjective realm, you acknowledge it, and you even acknowledge the person is not their subjective realm. Made the environment is part of their behavior. You know, that means just because a person is upset doesn't mean you must exile them. You know, it's some, who was it? He said there's these two nice quotes. It says, "Yesterday's enemy is today's friend," and the other quote is, "Oh my God, Jesus, what was the other quote?" Oh, if you want a friend that is flawless, you'd be friendless. There we go. So, anyways, guys, maintain your decency as a human being. This is the most crucial thing. There's no greater wisdom than that, because we're a natural being, because there's a sort of multidimensional antenna thing going on with our brains. So we have to be mindful and really if when you as a human being learn to navigate in the stillness and silence. So I use the pilot analogy. So I'm acknowledging the listener is the pilot of their consciousness. Literally, it's your responsibility to navigate your experience of your plane of existence. Trust is a beautiful thing, but it must be earned. And what I mean by that is, behind your minds, you won't trust something until you have dived into it, until you have lived it. That's where experience comes in. That's a fascinating question you brought up in the quote, in the comment section, CS. Can you speak from within or without? So here's the thing. Without, it's yes, you can, because you're a body and you're acknowledging the voice box and the biological constitution and how the rhythm of the air goes in with even how your emotions kind of apply, like your, you know. So there is the objective, like you can say sound exists, but you're saying, can you speak? The intention for sound to be vocalized is from within. But I am telling you, what inspires within is too instantaneous. That means it's like we're guessing, like our intelligence is in another dimension. When we go to the edge to see it, what we really realize is like the attributeless, the untouchable. It's too instantaneous to define. You know, this is why these poor gurus, all they could say to people was silence. Silence is divine. It's like, shut up, people. Just that's it. When you're quiet, you see it. You can say like so. You see the within and without see at some point goes. So I'm telling you, at some point, you got to trust what you are. At some point, yes, you can access other viewpoints and other parallels and work with that, right? Because to you, I am an object physically, but also a subject, as you are a subject to yourself. And now I am saying our ancestors have been living so many years thinking they're the same subject. It's like, yeah, live for this subject. It's like, why are you living for that? Because my ancestors did. Oh, okay, okay. Let's go on. Let's live for what our ancestors did. Not realizing that the past can limit how the future can be alive. Interesting. So I don't know if, like, guys, by the way, anybody who's listening to me, due to the blessed reason that this is a live stream, feel free, like as if you're on your couch, to challenge my ideology. Just kind of like it's like the School of Athens 2.0 is these moments. You know what I mean? Sorry, guys, I'm drinking. There is something called Delester, Delster. This drink is literally like grain, grain juice. Like I don't know. Anyways, guys, just felt like promoting that product. Yeah. Just I think ultimately, we're conscious of what happens and we work with what we have. You know, the greatest wisdom that I received was do the best you can. That's it. What else can you do? It's doesn't get stranger than that, folks. No, there's definitely more, guys. We're not just chemicals in a container, in a biological container. Like that's the appearance. There's definitely more, because the animation happens more. It's as if like we think our evolution took like billions of yeah, 4 billion years to evolve to where we, and suddenly we see, holy shit, this caterpillar went into the cocoon and became a butterfly. This tiny insect transformed into a totally different being in front of our eyes, but it took us 4 billion years to kind of be like, all right, let's stand. So that's what I'm saying, right? If you take the Zen approach, it's just exertion of effort, then end. Now, I'm saying you as a human being have a free will to exert any sort of effort, but to be aware of space, that means before you put furniture in a room, you got to be aware of the space, right? So now imagine in every moment of your life, you're like, what's the space? You suddenly see how things are still. Then suddenly you get this hyper attention to everything that moves. Strangely, the more you concentrate on stillness, the more hyper your attention becomes to movement, and it's vice versa also applies. Okay, so Dominic, just rewrite that same question. I think I know what you're saying. Just rewrite your question again. Okay? But I think I know what you're saying. No, 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 no. It's not just you. What you think is you is actually laws, the laws of nature. Okay, laws beyond the language threshold. So I'm not getting into like what mask is that person wearing, mask is that person wearing. We don't want to just endlessly till the end of time just point at each other's masks, you know. So I yes, magic. There is you can say the inefficient use of language is magic. The efficient. Okay, okay. Let's say I got your question, Dominic. So you say, look at a wall and ponder from within if the thought or words exist on the object you call wall. So let me tell you this, okay? Let's imagine it doesn't. Let's just imagine it's an illusion. Just entertain with me for 1 second. No, guys, just check this out, Dominic. Imagine this is an illusion. Let's just call this an illusion. Now imagine in this illusion, I ask, where's my cup of oranges? All right, guys, I'm going to continue. Sorry, I had to. So this is what I'm saying, Dominic. Imagine right now this world is an illusion. Let's say me and you realize this life is a simulation. Now the question comes, in this simulation, I want to find truth. The moment the concept of an illusion cannot exist with the concept of the truth. So let's say you're experiencing the illusion. As a human being, you're like, holy shit, this is an illusion. All this is a simulation. It's a dream, you know? Now you would ask yourself, if I was to find truth, it would be to experience it in the moment, right? Because I experience time as moment, 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 this moment, this moment, this moment. Do you see? So that means there has to be truth to the illusion. The illusion is being witnessed by the truth. So all the dualities of your mind will at some point bow in silence to you. When they bow in silence, it's you become like, it's like somebody explained the personality of the wind. Guess what? It doesn't have one. It's just a movement. It's a dance. It's when the unknown has entered the vision of the person. So, guys, what I'm saying is, if we saw it to be an illusion, we would have to ask what is experiencing the illusion. And if truth can only experience things in the here and now, do you see what I mean? It's like your truth is instantaneous. The truths of our experience are instantaneous. I speak to a world that I don't see the other side of. There's so many mysteries in life. Life can have so many dimensions. But the thing about, I think the simple meaning of life is to be comfortable with what is. The complex meaning of life is to do, and that ultimately comes as collective service. Collective service can only be achieved in the natural state. So you see, it's like you're considering 3 chess moves ahead of you're considering the 3 chess moves like ahead for the opponent in response to your move. I don't know how to say it, guys. Maybe chess isn't the best metaphor, even though unknown hands do move the pieces of matter in a sort of framework of law. It's fascinating. It's like the laws of nature are like barriers of our identity. So anyways, guys, I hope this talk was helpful. If there are more questions, please share now. I'm going to drink something for like 30 seconds. All right, guys, one last thing to say. Attar, this poet, would say, what would he say? He would say, the soul of the soul of the soul. In Vedic thought, we have the Atman, we have the Parabrahma. We have the individualized, we have kind of like the solid state, the physical body, the liquid state, the mind, and then the gas state, the soul. A sort of metaphor in the Gita like, check out this metaphor, guys. This is next level. The metaphor is of, imagine your physical, your objective realm is the chariot. Imagine your body is your body is the horses of this chariot, and the chariot driver is your mind, and the one in the chariot is the soul. Now imagine, so the solid liquid gas state thing. So now check this out. They say that if the chariot driver, like realistically, just imagine you're in an old school kind of like chariot, okay? And the chariot driver is riding. Now imagine suddenly the person inside the chariot, the soul is like, what is this turbulence that's happening to me? Right? So what happens is the soul steps out of the chariot, the divine approaches, and in some sense, the chariot driver is like, the guy's like, yo, chariot driver, are you falling asleep? What is this? And the chariot driver is like, oh, sorry, man, sorry. And the horses are the body just continuing. And that was the kind of divinity they saw, the ancients saw. It was the intervention of the true self of the universal sector in the moment. I frame it in for modern times as the advanced communicator realizing they're the advanced communication of the universal sector. So as much as you can identify with this biological, with this chunk of atoms, guess what? You can identify with as many chunk of atoms you want. But the thing is that we have to acknowledge the illusion, and we have to build the truth through the illusion. That means there's no way in my talks I'm saying everybody should go in a cave and meditate. Like, no way I'm saying that. You know, I'm just simply saying that When you see the importance of your own vision, you instantaneously get the automatic inspiration to update everything that's happening in your life. I remember, like, this has happened to me a while. It's like, you can say it's not a faculty of intelligence, it's a faculty of wonder. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. When decency starts, a true civilization breathes for the first time. Namaste.